Hey, everybody, good evening. Welcome to episode 42 of the Giant Zone. Tonight, of course, in addition to your co-hosts here, Steve the Banker, and yours truly, Fly Guy Carl, we are joined by members of the Podfather Washington Commanders podcast. I want to introduce our two guests, soon to be joined by another one. Kyle, is it Rennick, Kyle?
Yeah, Roenick, like Jeremy Roenick,
Like
the
Jeremy,
former
yep.
hockey player. Yep.
Yep, very good. And Mike Reed. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you for some time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, seriously, thank you for the invite. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk with opposing fans. We'll try to be as cordial as possible. I'm not really sure what that word means in New York, but we'll try our best to do so.
Well, it's got various, depending on what borough in New York you're talking about, it's got various. But so guys, we like to give our followers a little bit of background about some of our guests. So why don't you guys give us a little background about yourselves? How you became Commanders fans, and then tell us about the podcast, how you developed that, and so on and so forth. Please.
I was born a Redskins fan, obviously growing up and through the turmoil of the years, the teenage years, having to grow up in the Montgomery County schools here in Maryland with a really bad team, and Sean Taylor was a lot of the, I guess you could say, excitement around the team for our age group in that time period, and so that was like a tumultuous point in time. But it was around 2016, 2017. I was doing another show called the Sports Drunkies where we were doing just fantasy football pick'ems and players to watch every Sunday. And I was like, I wanted to do something Washington based, and I had one person in mind, and that was Mike Reed. And so I went to Reed and I was like, look, I want to get something started here. And he was all about it. He was on it. And honestly, I didn't want anyone else besides him and Hall, and I'm glad that they were able to come on. And then we just kept with it, like short. And then we were able to get our big time guest was Morgan Moses at the time, who was the right tackle for the Redskins. And so that was a really cool moment. And that was during the COVID year. And at the end of that COVID year is when the Washington organization had given this kind of contest for Best Fan Podcast Award. And so then we won the Best Fan Podcast Award. And since then, it's just been a kind of like just a blur. It's just been so fast the way life has been with the podcast. But we do it twice a week, man. I honestly, as much as this team gives us the gripe and a lot of stress, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing.
Right.
And same here. His exact background. Fan my entire life. Then he contacted me and got into the podcasting, and it was all from there. But we've had a lot of hardships, and you guys, your team has not made it any easier for us with the way that you guys have owned us over the last few years. So that's been tough. But hey, we'll be nice here today because we got nothing for respect for the Giants and Brian Daboll and what you guys have done, because I think it's been amazing, to be completely honest with you. I'm very impressed with the Giants right now.
So that's actually a good segue to get this off. So what is the buzz about the Giants, as far as the Redskins fan base goes? What do you guys think about the turnaround from last year, the improvement, and what these guys have done with this team and the direction this is going? What is everybody thinking about the Giants down there right now?
I think a lot of the fan base respects New York. I think they're really surprised by the turnaround. I know I disrespected New York going into the season. Just like that was like the common national thought of the Giants, like new coach, rebuild, they're going to be whatever, not knowing that Saquon Barkley was going to come in and be fourth in the league right now in rushing yards, getting back to his former self. So I've been really surprised by them. They're respectful. Obviously, Brian Dable coming from the Buffalo system with Sean McDermott, which is from the Rivera tree. A lot of respect for those guys because they're good coaches. But I will say that obviously Dave Gettleman was terrible at his job. That's what I have learned so far.
Horrible.
Yeah, and we one thing us Washington fans, and I don't think you guys will probably hear this from any other fans, but we respect Daniel Jones in a weird way more so than probably any other fan base, because Daniel Jones always turns into Michael Vick against us, and he just always destroys us, and we don't get it because he has that natural dumb face, kind of like Eli had, but he doesn't look like a quarterback, but he tears us up every time, and we really do respect Daniel Jones, as odd as it might be for you guys to hear that, and we love the way that Brian Daboll's handled this team.
If somebody told me Daniel Jones was a cousin of the Mannings, I would totally believe it.
100%.
100%.
You guys know that nickname going around for him now, Vanilla Vic, right?
Yeah.
Vanilla, yeah, exactly. That's exactly who he is against us too, especially. And it's miserable. It is miserable facing Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and it's weird because he kind of just clicks against us, and that is the concern going into this game. But I will say, obviously, you guys have a stable foundation where you are, and Washington isn't going into this thinking it's going to be a pushover because obviously you guys
Not at all.
sitting at 7-4. So it's going to be a dogfight. It really is. I think a lot of the Washington fan base just eager to see because we've seen them go against the Cowboys, seen them go against the Eagles twice. The matchup against the Giants, who are hot early on in this season, I think a lot of the fan base is excited to see the matchup.
So let me ask you a Washington football question here. So, Giant fans, we hate Dallas, we hate Philadelphia. Those, and then comes Washington, to be honest with you, because it's a division rivalry. So what are the big rivalries with the Redskins? Is it also the Eagles and the Cowboys as well?
The Commanders, Carl.
I'm sorry, there I go.
Yeah.
Dude, it's okay. It's okay.
Sorry,
It's
Kyle, it's your
actually
fault. You did it first. You did it first.
I did.
It's so funny because that's exactly how it is with us. It's like the Cowboys for sure number one, Eagles were right there, they're number two, and then the Giants. Like, I mean, obviously we're division rivals, but it just doesn't have the same. I feel like we as fans kind of respect the Giants more, even though you guys have won more Super Bowls than any of those teams over the last decade. It's just for whatever reason, it's just we don't have the hate for you guys like we do with the Cowboys and Eagles, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fandom. To be completely honest, your guys' fans are not as annoying as Cowboys and Eagles fans.
I will say that. I will also say I've always viewed the Giants as kind of like the older brother, whereas like yeah, you could talk smack about them, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't be. It's always
Right.
been that kind of relationship with the Giants where we might get one here and there, but it's going to be a fight every time. And we the Giants it sucks because it's like one of those teams that we can't get a finger on whenever we play you guys. Like something always crazy happens,
Right.
and definitely expecting that this weekend.
Yeah, yeah. Steve, what do you have? Any questions?
I do. So it's funny. This has become a tale of two seasons for the Giants. We went off to such a hot start, such an unforeseeable start for in a beautiful way for all Giants fans. I mean, the record performance of the team, our defense. We had high hopes, but still it exceeded the wildest expectations of all Giants fans. The efficiency of our offense and our defense, and now the last few games, obviously the Giants have lost a few, as everybody knows. We've had a rough time with some devastating injuries, some of which are guys that have been out for the season now. Some are hopefully getting back this week. So the reason I say all that is because when I think of Washington, it's funny. You guys have been through a similar metamorphosis, and I want you to tell it better than me as fans. Is Carson Wentz off to you got when I think of your team and I look at your roster, I'm like, man, you guys have spent a lot of draft picks. De'Ami Brown, Jahan Dotson. That was always a thing. You never had a number 2 or number 3 receiver to go with McLaurin. Well, now you have it. You've always had very good, capable tight ends. Unfortunately, probably top 10 if they didn't get injured. But when I look at your team, I see Logan Thomas, who's 21 receptions, 190 yards, 1 touchdown. But I see all these weapons. Curtis Samuel finally coming back from injury. And then Carson Wentz, a guy who can air it out and throw it, and he's big and he's strong and he's got a gun of an arm, he's mobile. And now you switch to Taylor Heineke. So my question to you is Riverboat Ron, Gambler, all these offensive weapons. When I think of Washington, I think, wow, you guys are like really just throwing to McLaurin, leaning on the running game, and there's no Riverboat Ron. How would you describe the change, the metamorphosis of your season and what we as Giants fans can expect? Is it going to be more of the same? Or is it no? Our defensive secondary is having some issues. You guys are going to start throwing to all these other weapons, or do you think they're going to stick to whatever that formula has been? Does that make sense?
Reed, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. With Carson Wentz early on in the season, we were airing it out. I think we were 7th in the NFL in total pass attempts per game. With Taylor Heineke, you see the exact opposite. They know that they can't throw the ball nearly as much, so they're relying on the run game a lot more with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, and that's worked for them because with Taylor Heineke, he turns the ball over. He'll make plays every once in a while, but he'll also make some plays like he did against the Falcons. His interception last week was just like, why would you even throw that? I know better than to throw that football. So when we can get on when our ground game is going and we are just dominating the time of possession, that's when you really start to see this team playing at its best. And the defense kind of feeds off that as well because they kind of stay fresh. So with this defensive line being as good as it is, which by the way, I'm excited to see our defensive line versus your offensive line with Andrew Thomas playing out of his mind. It's a real throwback kind of feel to it over the last 6-7 games. Like it's just throwback smash mouth football. the kind that you used to see from the Super Bowl winning Redskins teams a little bit with John Riggins. But it's definitely one of those things with Taylor Heineke where your heart is constantly racing, and your defense will definitely have some opportunities if we have to start throwing the ball.
Yeah, that's a great synopsis. I would say early on in the season there was a bunch of things. It was like the perfect storm. Carson Wentz coming into a new system, going new players. The offensive line was dealt with a bad injury to Chase Rouillet. Andrew Norwell didn't practice in training camp. Neither did Trey Turner. So neither of the guards did. So the offensive line was giving up a lot of sacks. I think they gave up 9 to Philadelphia. Started the season 1-4. Carson hurts his hand against who was it? Chicago, I think it was.
Yeah, it was Chicago. Yeah.
And so then everything changed. We ended up getting Tyler Larson back. Some guys came back healthy. Logan Thomas has not been himself until the last 2 games.
Coming back from his injury. Yeah.
ACL injury himself. So he's been kind of getting into his true form there. And so we really haven't had all the weapons at our disposal. So what's happening now is like what you alluded to with your team, where it's like the flip-flop where we started slow, but now we're getting guys back and we're building up this momentum, this kind of confidence, because I'm telling you, this as a Washington fan, I'm sure obviously you guys are well aware, we're not used to 7-5. Like if that happens, something crazy is going on. And so we're trying to be trepidatious about it and everything, but they've caught fire. They've gotten very lucky. I will admit that. They've gotten very lucky, but I will say generally the teams that go far, they get lucky.
Yeah.
It just happens. Think about that Philly run. They just got lucky at times. I'm not going to say Washington's going to the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going deep, but I'm just saying that kind of thing is what carries teams.
Right.
And I think the health and all of that coming into fruition, the defense playing well, but I am concerned about them giving up 160 rushing yards last week to the Falcons.
Yeah.
If I'm Brian Daboll, I'm looking at that and how the read option was very useful for them. And if I'm him, I'm going to hammer that in all week at practice and say, Washington, defeat that. Stop that from happening. And that's my big concern heading into this game, because your rushing attack with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, it's kind of crazy because that's your offense. Saquon's your leading receiver with 37 targets. Then you got Daniel Jones with four touchdowns on the ground himself with over 300 yards rushing. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a dogfight, and I'm really looking forward to it.
And to add on to what you were talking about with our weapons, like we know we have a lot of Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, right. Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, Cole Turner. We have Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick when he was healthy, Brian Robinson. There's so many weapons, and it's very frustrating for us as Washington fans to see these nice new shiny toys not getting used as much. Yeah. We're winning games, so that's fun. But like we all feel like if we can at some point get the guy under center here this offseason, whatever it is, we'll be in a lot better position. However, right now it is working out with Taylor Heineke. So
I didn't even include Brian Robinson, obviously, who got shot in the offseason in August. So he was slow to come back, obviously, but he looks like he's true to form now. And then William Jackson III, nobody really wants to admit it around here, but he was probably the big issue with the pass defense and why they were giving up a lot of big plays. Because ever since his departure, they haven't been giving up as many big plays to the passing game, and they've actually been able to get some turnovers here and there. They're opportunistic. They find a way to get it done, and honestly, they're lucky, but we love them for it.
So here's what I find amazing, and I want to play in the quarterback situation you guys have for a minute. When I look at the numbers between Wentz and Heineke, they're actually very similar. I mean, the completion percentage for Wentz is 62.1, and for Heineke is 60.8, and they both played 6 games. I'm just curious, does the team seem to respond better to Heineke? Do you think there's an issue possibly? Wentz has had a reputation of being a turd and not being a good teammate previously. Right. Do you think there's some of that going on? And do you think Heineke has come in and given him a spark? It just seemed that everything turned around for you guys once you made that change.
So it's a perfect storm where Carson came into that new system. The offensive line had injuries, so they were really getting after him, and it was hard for us to win games because the defense hadn't clicked yet because William Jackson was still there. So the defense was giving up a lot of yards. They couldn't run the ball fundamentally. They were passing the ball well in kind of these crazy situations like against the Jaguars, but besides that, it kind of fell short. And so the dichotomy here is that Taylor Heineke does the small nuances and knows the offense better. So he would throw a guy open, whereas Carson was waiting for a guy to be open, and he was getting sacked 9 times a game. We needed the escapability just to be able to shift inside the pocket, put the ball where it needed to be, but obviously Taylor still has his mistakes. But I feel like it's an accumulation of the defense letting go of William Jackson III, kind of finding themselves their identity, and then Scott Turner also realizing, let's run the ball a heck of a whole lot. Let's make it easy on the quarterback position instead of having him going in these 7-step dropbacks constantly. And as they made that adjustment, they kind of just clicked at the same time.
Right. And that's also kind of what you saw against Philadelphia. That was kind of like when this offense really kind of got it figured out and what their bread and butter was. I think it was something like a 40-minute to 19 time of possession or something crazy like that, like 40-minute, 30 seconds to 19, 30. It was something ridiculous. And that really, after that game, it's been, okay, well, hey, we're just going to run the ball. And with Taylor Heineke, the dude is just so passionate. He's been here.
Right.
The guys just all seem to really gather around him. I don't know what it is. RG3 had a very good quote. Surprisingly, look, I never agree with RG3, but he had a very good quote where he was saying, like, obviously Carson Wentz is a better quarterback. He has a better arm. I don't think anybody would say that Taylor Heineke has better traits. I don't think anybody would say he's had as much success. I don't think anybody would ever say Taylor Heineke's a better quarterback. But for whatever reason, Taylor Heineke just seems to have that one thing that you can't measure, where the guys just for whatever reason rally for him and want to play for him, and they don't know what it is. You can't really measure that attribute, but Heineke's got it right now, and as long as somebody has that and you're winning games, you got to stick with them. So we're all for it, but eventually this ruck should run out with Taylor Heineke. So let's just hope it's not this week.
I like to
the
say,
next game either.
I like to say he's Shane Falco from the Replacements.
Yes.
You know, where
Yeah.
it doesn't really make sense as to why they're successful, but it's just like a team thing. Like I know people have an issue with saying that Taylor gets the guys to play well. Like you shouldn't need the quarterback to get you to play well. You know what I mean? I just feel
Right.
like it's a team clicking all at the same time.
And here's another question I have. Explain to me about the running game, and I'm going to tell you why. I've always been very fond of Antonio Gibson. You know, all right, he's not Saquon, but I mean, he's useful. He's as good in the passing game as he is in the running game. I actually had him in fantasy, I think 2 years ago. He was great. But my point is, I hear so much about, Washington's looking to deal him, but he may not make the team. Now, I do have to say this though, in watching that Philadelphia game, that Brian Robinson looks like he's going to be great. He looks like, and he is big. I didn't realize how big he is. Just kind of take me through the differences between the two and what the situation and what you think the long-term solution is there.
Yeah. So Brian Robinson tends to be more of the north-south runner. He's somebody who he just has that natural ability of finding a hole and always moving his legs forward, constantly falling forward, just always making something out of nothing. Even if he's getting hit behind the line, he's still picking up half a yard or so. Like he's always I'd say he's a more natural running back. Whereas Antonio Gibson, who was a former wide receiver. I mean, believe it or not, when you look at his body type, you would just be like, that guy's been a running back his whole life. But he was a wide receiver in college. He's definitely built for running back, but so he's not really nuanced in a running back's full responsibilities yet, because he doesn't have the experience that Brian Robinson has of him playing running back his entire life. So he's very good as a pass catcher. He's very good. He has his moments, his big plays. He had fumbling issues last year, which I think is why they went out and said, okay, this guy's not going to be carrying the ball 25 to 30 times a game.
Right.
We got to get somebody else to help relieve him. And it's worked out for him, really, because even though he's gotten some touches taken away, they're finding more creative ways to use him. And I think that that's really benefited Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, and then last season, J.D. McKissick goes out with an injury, and they kind of can't run the ball between the tackles in short yardage situations. So Ron Rivera goes out in the offseason, goes to get Brian Robinson, who I like to call a young Derrick Henry, where you add him into this offense as just that bigger kind of stellar that grinds you out kind of running back. And we have a nickname for the running back trio before McKissick got hurt is Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth being Brian Robinson, Fire being Antonio Gibson, and Wind being McKissick being the passing down back. And Antonio Gibson has this raw ability of being able to really stretch plays out vertically, but he does have an issue of being vision and breaking loose of tackles. But Brian Robinson does not lack in that category whatsoever. He's a freight train. As soon as he gets going, it's hard to bring him down. Sometimes it takes 3 to 4 guys to be able to bring him down. He's a tenacious, tough runner, and and the reason why he was so heavily used last week is because of the rain. The terrain, what was happening in that game, it was smarter to use Brian Robinson heavily and just grind out that thin D line of the Falcons and just tire him out by the end of that game. And it worked. And that's generally how they've used Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson early, hammer you out, get you tired, and then use the Fire and Antonio Gibson out on the outside so your guys have to catch up.
Interesting. It seems to me that you believe that, I mean, if everybody stays healthy and has a full camp next year, Brian Robinson's going to be the number one. Is that correct?
Yes, I would imagine so. I think that they
Or maybe
really
a
like
one
this.
and one A?
Yeah, I think that they like the committee approach, but I would say for sure Brian Robinson on first and second downs almost like a guarantee, almost for sure first down. Like they love running Brian Robinson early on, so I would think that you would consider him more the running back one. That's
Yeah,
just my opinion. Yeah,
I would be kind of cautious about that at this point, just because how many times have we gone into the offseason thinking something about the running back position, and
Darius
then they
guys.
completely take us by
Yeah,
surprise.
right.
So we have no idea what's really going on. But most
That's true.
likely, the way that it's going down, yeah, I think Brian Robinson is going to be the number one. But if that Antonio Gibbs is going to be 1B, it's going to be the
Right.
kind of fire electricity
And
situation.
also to touch on the trade thing, you're right. I think a lot of us were kind of surprised by that too, because we all love Antonio Gibson here. I think a lot of it was kind of media kind of pushing stuff out there, because I think the way Ron Rivera has spoken about Antonio Gibson and saying that they didn't really have any interest in trading him, despite what the reports were saying.
Mm.
I think that a lot of that was kind of just media members looking at the roster and saying, okay, well, this doesn't really make sense if they have Brian Robinson and J.D. McKissick, so maybe they're going to trade for him. I don't think there was much to it. At least I hope not. I like to tell myself that.
Steve, what do you got?
So one person that we haven't spoken a lot about, he's had 48 receptions so far this year, 493 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's probably the guy that scares me, aside from McLaurin, it's the guy that actually scares me the most. That's Curtis Samuel. How are they using him? I know most Giants fans who are watching or listening as they're watching this are probably thinking, I remember when he was a free agent recently from Carolina. Man, I wanted the Giants to try to go after him, but we couldn't afford him. How is Washington using him? What can we expect as Giants fans when we watch this game?
It's kind of like a low key style of Debo Samuel, where you see a lot of him in pre snap motions, just dictating to Taylor what the coverage is by the defense. And you might see him take a handoff here and there from that motioning pre snap, but generally he's used in the short to medium range of kind of situations. He's been pivotal at times of being able to utilize on third and fourth downs for Taylor in some big crucial situations. Curtis Samuel has time and time again come up and helped us in those situations, but also in the running game against Houston. One of the only touchdowns we had, Curtis Samuel on the ground. Because him coming off the edge completely took them by surprise. They had no idea it was coming. And that's just kind of the other element that he brings
Yeah.
on top of being a receiver.
Right.
So do they put him in the backfield with one of your other traditional running backs, or how do they typically align him up?
Typically, he'll be in the slot, but I know at training camp we did see him line up in the backfield a heck of a whole lot. We've seen it this season as well. At times, they don't use it a heck of a whole lot. I wouldn't expect to see it like noticeably, but if it does happen, it's only he's motioning into the backfield and the play's being snapped right away, and he's
Well, Carl,
probably being used.
that's what worries me with our linebacking core. Oh man.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the other, they did this
Right.
very well early on in the season, where they would get the ball to Curtis Samuel's hands short. Carson Wentz loved throwing to Curtis
Yeah,
Samuel.
he
It seemed
did.
like it's kind of fallen off a little bit with Heineke on there, but then the whole passing game has. But Jahan Dotson's been a ghost these last 2 weeks. I didn't even know he was healthy, to be honest. You barely even see him. But
He's played 60% of the snaps 2 games straight. He's only been targeted 4 times.
yeah,
Yep.
it's
That's
been a big
great.
adjustment, I think, with Taylor Heineke under center, because Carson Wentz seemed to really, really like him. I mean, he had 4 touchdowns through 3 games, and then it's just kind of fallen off ever since the injury. But hey, winning cures that, so they've been on a winning streak. So I don't think he cares too much at the moment.
Yeah, and I do think of them going to a lot of 12 and 13 personnel as of
That's
late to
true,
run the
right?
ball a lot more.
De'Ami Brown's also a better blocker,
Right, has
so
taken the
he's
kind of snaps away from Jahan Dotz, which is unfortunate because he was a touchdown king early on in the season. We want to get back to that. But that being said, we can't complain with winning football. But obviously, you're going to have to utilize all of your weapons and find a way to be able to do that. And that's one of probably the concerns of Washington fans with offensive coordinator Scott Turner is being able to find a way to get these other guys utilized, but also being able to target Terry a heck of a whole lot and make sure we could run the football. So that's where the problem arises. Where do you want to win the game? Would you rather be effective running the football, or do you want to push the ball to everybody? And probably
one
you could say
second.
the biggest weakness.
And to Steve's point, Curtis Samuel is actually your third leading rusher.
Yep.
And Steve, very observant on your part, because that's what stood out at me. Our linebackers are not going to be able to keep up with that. That scares me. So I share your concern with that. My last question about the offense, and I know we're gonna want to get into defense too, is so what should we expect from from Washington on offense? Are you guys going to pound the ball? Is there a lot of RPO? Is there a lot of play action? What should we really expect? What are your strengths on offense, and what do you guys like to do? What are the schemes that you run, so on and so forth?
Well, the scheme is really runs through the tight ends if you really look at it from its root. But because of the injuries to tight end, we've had just an influx of different guys who've all been honestly been contributing a lot and doing very well. John Bates, Cole Turner, the rookie fifth round pick, was phenomenal in run blocking last week. Logan Thomas, 2 games ago, had a really good coming out game. Wasn't targeted a heck of a whole lot, but did really well blocking as well there. That being said, what you're going to see this Sunday, obviously, you guys in rushing yards up until this point ranked 26th in the league, giving up 138 yards over in the ground. So that's going to be the point of emphasis. That's what our game plan has been for the past, 8, 7 games. And that's something that's going to be harped on. But the other thing I will say is that being ranked 16th in passing, I do think Scott Turner's not going to shy away from that at times. And so you're going to see a lot of that run heavy stuff. You're not going to see the read option or anything like that. Taylor, as much as he is an elusive kind of moving kind of quarterback, he's not good at read options. He kind of just doesn't, he's not able to read the D end very well for some reason. So you won't be able to see that all that much, but you'll see a lot of movement pre-snap and everything like that. But you expect running the football first and then play action off of that and
So,
hopefully hitting Terry deep as possible.
so I don't mean to be rude and interrupt, but I want you to drill that down a little, Kyle. And Mike, you too, please. We have what? I mean, listen, I don't care what anybody thinks. We have perhaps the best defensive tackle tandem in football. Because remember, we run a 3-4, not a 4-3. These are true big ass
Mm.
defensive tackles that can rush the passer and stop the run. There is no defensive tackle in football like these two guys. But then there's not much else on the outside in terms of
Right.
setting the edge because of our injuries and the youth of our defensive ends, and then our linebackers, which we just alluded to. So my question for you is, most teams, as long as our two starters are in there, are not going to run the ball up the middle. You just won't.
Mm.
When Dex and Leonard Williams are in there, don't expect to run up the middle. But where teams have been running the crap out of us is the outside zones, stretching. So what's your, can you drill that down a little when you say your running success, and I know you guys are great at running the ball, are they between the tackles, guard to center, A gap, B gap, or are you guys stretching it with that motion? And where are you? You're probably going to take advantage of our weakness defending those style of runs. Like, how are you going to run it against us?
Absolutely. Brian Robinson had a big run last week early on in that game off to the left side. What they did is they motioned John Bates two off of the left tackle pre-snap, and he kind of went with the formation and popped Brian Robinson to go, I think, for a 15 to 20 yard gain. Diami Brown had a great block on the play. But if that's what the weakness is, that's what they will harp on and they will hit you there. And that's what they're kind of going towards. And if it is the sideline, I would expect Antonio Gibson to have north of 15 carries. I would kind of you like almost like Bill Belichick in this thing where you can never guess what running back is getting touches this week based on the hot hand of what the defense is giving you. I would expect Antonio Gibson to be used out wide in those stretch plays. They don't shy away from them in the least. I'm sure that they are looking at Dexter Lawrence very, very hard. I think he's the leading sacker on your team right now on defense. So I know that they're looking at him. He's a fundamental elite defensive tackle. They're going to do everything they can to run away from him.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine you're not going to see too many 100% north-south runs, but from anybody, they're going to try to definitely hit those edges and turn up field. But yeah, I mean that's a good point. I completely agree with you. I think that that needs to be more recognized around the league how good your guys' interior defensive line is because they are just unreal. And us as Washington fans, we know how important that can be. Granted, like you said, we're running a 4-3, but watching you guys up there, you guys don't let up much yards up the middle, and that's something that definitely got to be cautious of.
I'm worried about those guys running the ball against us onto the outside.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm worried if they can get
It's-
outside, Steve, it's going to be a long day.
I hope it is. You know.
I hope so. But it's easier said than done,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
because you guys get paid well too. There's a reason why you're sitting here at 7-4 because you play good defense and you execute. And as much as Daniel Jones has 4 fumbles on the ground and then 4 interceptions, you still find ways to win these games. And it's really intriguing to say and look at the Giants because, like we talked about before, they're so surprising. But it's like they're almost like us in a way where they just grind you out. They force you to come down and play play like a bare knuckle boxing match kind of thing, and that's how they force their opponents to play. That's why I'm like really excited about this game because they're two similar kind of match teams in a way.
How
We're
is
missing two of our starting defensive backs,
yeah.
Dory Jackson and Xavier McKinney, that normally are two of the best defensive backs in football at supporting the run
Yeah.
defense. So even if you guys were to do that, I wouldn't be as scared, Carl, if we had those two guys back there, because it's like Dory, who's a top 10 lockdown corner now. He doesn't get the interceptions, but he's top 10. He's hurt. And it's crazy how he's now learned to support the run.
Yes.
And then Xavier is out. So it's like, oh my God, man.
And you know, Steve, you just kind of hit on where I was going was tell me, give us a little insight to your downfield passing game because that, you know, with our secondary being as banged up as it is right now, you know, do you expect the Commanders to take advantage yet? Is there a lot of downfield passing, or is it you know is it short and is it dink and dunk? Give me a feel for what we got to look for here Sunday.
So there's definitely times where it seems like Scott Turner, at least early on this season, especially with Wentz, will kind of get lost and try to do too much throwing the ball downfield. We saw that a lot early on. And like when we would get down early, it was like Scott Turner completely abandoned the run and we're just throwing the ball. We're taking shots. Carson Wentz is going to try to find deep. Under Taylor Heineke, that hasn't been the case. He will take some shots every once in a while once the run game gets going and try to catch people by surprise. Of course, they love throwing to Terry downfield, but you haven't really seen that much over like the last month or so. So I'm hoping that he's kind of learned his lesson. But I would imagine that they're going to try to take a few shots down there, at least early on, maybe to kind of test, see how your guys' secondary is going to be doing with those injuries, or just to try to back you up a little bit. But it's not nearly as often as it was earlier this season, for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of Washington fans have been complaining about just running like a simple concept in slant routes. And Terry has done that on a third down recently. We're all like, oh, thank goodness, finally. And so like it's not really dink and dunk to that extent. If they are going to throw the football, generally where they have success is in the medium to long passing game is near the sideline. They're finding the holes in the zone. They're putting the ball on the sideline, saying, my guy, go get the ball for me. So it's not going to be the kind of Aaron Rodgers-esque type of thing where they slice and dice you up down the field. It's more so just grind you out, throw the ball to the outlet based on what the defense is giving you, essentially. So it's not going to be, you're not going to see a lot of deep balls, but if you are, it's going to be in that medium range and more towards the sideline.
Steve, do you want to start off defense?
If it's okay with you, there's one thing I want to ask about offense before we move on to D.
Sure.
And you're not going to be surprised because you know I love talking about this. So, guys, one other thing that I feel like the Giants and Commanders have in common is the turnover in offensive line. You mentioned Morgan Moses earlier. Both teams for the better, hopefully, right? We've improved our offensive line through some subtractions and additions. Andrew Norwell, for my money, other than Quentin Nelson, there was a time that he was considered one of the best, if not one of the top two guards in football. Obviously, he's not quite that anymore. Um, I'll cut right to the chase. No pun intended. What would you say is the strength of your offensive line, and what would you say is the weakness if our front were to try to attack? And if Wink, who is, we all know, we haven't even talked about Wink, but everybody knows what he's capable of with his schematics and his exotic looks and showing quarterbacks things they've never seen before in spite of how much experience. What's the strength and what's the weakness of that offensive line? And when you answer that, by the way, is Trey Turner going to play? Because I heard he was banged up a little bit recently.
Yeah, Trey Turner's been banged up all year long. So he's been in and out of the lineup. Sadiq Charles been coming in. It's unfortunate because Wes Schweitzer, who is a kind of a staple of this offensive line, is like the kind of go-to backup for all the positions, an interchangeable piece. He's had a concussion, has been out for I think almost like 2 months or so. So we've been wondering where he is. But the strength of our offensive line is more on the outside. But we do well in running the ball effectively and just getting to the point of attack. But we'd love to be able to use the kind of trap plays, pulling this. We're not afraid to pull the center. We're not afraid to pull the guard. So like you said, to the outside, you're going to see a lot of those pulls to the outside with this offensive line. And then we love to use the tight ends. They are very effective blockers. John Bates, if you go back and look, probably from last week, one of the best tight ends in blocking for run blocking and pass blocking. It's almost like having another lineman out there. And then Logan Thomas, with his stature, his size, being a former quarterback, he understands fundamentals, is a very good blocker in his own right. and then adding in Colt Turner as well. So what you're going to see is not is it like the offensive line's effective and good? It's that both of them together, working together, they're effective.
Yeah, and one thing that we've done that I thought has been very interesting is when Samuel Cosme went out with an injury, we had what's his oh my god, I'm just having a big brain fart right there, Kyle.
Cornelius Lucas.
Yeah, Cornelius Lucas come in there and start at right tackle. He did all right, but now the first week that they came back, they switched them every quarter. So it was Sam Cosme starting once, Cornelius or in the first and third, I believe, and then Cornelius Lucas in the second and fourth, or vice versa. And they've done that for the last 3 weeks. They've just kept changing them every quarter, and that's not something you see every day, but it's really been working for them. They've gotten the best out of Cornelius Lucas over this stretch. Samuel Cosme's looked fantastic as well. So they're really just they're not scared to keep doing whatever's working, even if it's kind of unconventional. And that's something that I think has been really key to this success.
And Steve, that scares me because if they can get outside or they can get their running backs into space, that just it's gonna be a long day.
Just have Brandon Sheriff there as one of your like stalwart guards, and I know Norwell's there, but I feel like with our two D tackles, that I mentioned
You guys,
earlier,
yeah,
we can. But I have this horrible feeling, and we've started to see this against certain teams that Washington's going to say, yeah, we don't want to deal with those two guys up front. We're going to stretch it outside, and oh, by the way, we're not going to do seven step drops and just try to chuck it down the field. They're going to avoid the pressure up the middle that the Giants. That's
Right.
our strength,
Right.
and that's what worries me.
Yeah, I agree. I've just got a very uncomfortable feeling about this, at least about what this Washington offense can do here. It's very unsettling, but I'm confident. I'm confident. I'm just concerned.
Well, we're getting Aziz back, so you
Yes,
never
we
know.
are. We are. So, Steve, why don't
That's
you start
big.
it off about the defense?
yeah.
Listen, the big the big shine that everyone knows in the NFL is your defensive line. And what's impressive to me is you not only have a great front four, but you actually have some great backups. So it seems to me the strength is not just your starters, but the fact that you have depth, which, as we all know in the NFL, is harder and harder to get. So can you talk about the guys that the average fan may not know and how they're able to keep them fresh and what we're going to see from that front four?
Yeah. So they're replacing Chase Young has kind of just been like a nice little trifecta of guys. I mean, we've had F.A. Obata, who was brought in here as a free agent from Carolina, one of Ron's old former players, Casey Toohill and James Smith Williams, and they've all done a fantastic job getting after the quarterback. Like, it's weird because you would think missing Chase Young, who's been kind of our energy plug, one of the most naturally gifted edge rushers in the NFL, and we haven't really missed him too much. I mean, and that's I hate to say that because I love the guy, but I mean, this rotation has been fresh. They've been switching in and out so much that they constantly have fresh legs, and they've done a great job. And on top of that, John Ridgeway, who we stole from Dallas's practice squad, has been fantastic on the interior when he's come in there. I mean, we lost Fedarian Mathis, who was a second round pick. John Ridgway's come right in there, and he's fit in perfectly with Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, he had that suplex tackle against the Texans, and Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne and Montez Sweat all said that they would pay 3/4 of his fine total because otherwise he'd be playing games in December for free. Just don't do it again, they said, because it's a one-time thing.
So, Mike, let me ask you, as you're saying all that, are you expecting Chase Young back? And if he is back, how does that affect the rotation?
That has been the mystery so far in Washington, because a lot of us expected Chase to come back earlier in the season. I'm still under the impression that he had some sort of hiccup in his recovery. I don't know how true that is. That's kind of been theorized around here, but he's getting closer. I don't know if he'll play this week. I would imagine maybe the next Giants game after our bye week, but it's tough to say, man. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Kyle, what would you say about that? Because I haven't heard much about it so far.
I would say it's still up in the air, and I would say more time, the better. Just because we saw what happened with RG3 in this sort of situation. It was a total meniscus and ACL tear. It wasn't just a typical just cut. It was legit gone. So it takes a lot of time. And for somebody of that size, that athletic ability, the kind of power that he generates and being able to come off of his lift, it's gonna take some time for him to come back into fruition. But even if he does come back, he's only going to
Snap
be in a
count.
He's
Yeah.
going to be on
Yeah.
a snap count. He's going to be in a rotation of 10 to 15. And that's where the benefit of the bench comes, the backups comes in, because you don't have to rely on it. Yes, you'd love to have Chase Young back here, but it's not like that's your end all be all. You have been effective up until this point. And obviously, John Allen, Deron Payne have been on an absolute tear. I think John Allen is on an all pro level at this moment. I don't think there's anybody better than him at this moment. Deron Payne is absolutely killing it in the pass deflections, leading the NFL in that category, led to the game winning interception yesterday or 2 days ago. So this defensive line is doing really well. But the fact is, adding John Ridgeway, which allowed for us to use the nose tackle in a 5-man front, has really fixed a lot of the big play issues we had on the ground early on in this season. You can go back to the DeAndre Swift thing. You can go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had a big run on the ground. Ever since then, this defense has kind of taken settled down a little bit. We lost our starting middle linebacker and Cole Holcomb, who's on IR right now.
Right.
So we brought in John Bostic, obviously from free agency, and Jamin Davis, the second-year linebacker, has done a great job with the green dot. But the name in the run game that is going to be pivotal against Saquon Barkley is his name is Cameron Curl, the strong safety, rated as one of the best safeties in the NFL right now by Pro Football Focus. And I have a nickname for him called the Plug. And the reason for that is because he's a run fitter. He comes up and he cleans up. He makes the linebacker's job much easier. He makes them look really good. And he's kind of just the guy that comes up and cleans up the janitor, essentially.
How is he homegrown? I'm just curious. Where is he from? Tell us about him.
Cam
Do you
Curl?
know? Yeah.
Arkansas.
Yep.
We're good friends with his dad. He's a guest on our show. He comes on
Cool.
a lot. So he's military, and so Cam Curl was on bases a lot as a kid. The cool thing about Cam is last season he was able to have his own youth camp because he said back when he was young they didn't have money for those kind of camps, and so he wanted to give the camp for free to allow the kids like he would have appreciated. And so Cam Curl, yep, from Arkansas, wasn't a well sought after program because they were kind of low defensively. But my goodness, dude, ever since he's come back into the lineup after a wrist injury early on in the season, this defense has completely turned the corner. And I think a lot of that has to do with Cameron Curl returning.
I agree. He's actually your leading tackler.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing fantastic. He's doing good in coverage
Right.
as well.
So I call him the plug, baby.
Yeah.
You know what? I got to be honest with you. In my fantasy league, we draft defensive players. I drafted him, but then I cut him before opening day.
Oh, no.
Well, it's because of the injury, guys. I mean,
Yeah,
come on,
right.
man.
Yeah.
Carl, you should have
Yeah.
called me.
I know.
Should have called me,
yeah.
Carl.
It's all about the points, man. Come on, you know that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
So, would you? I mean, what do you guys do well on defense? Do you blitz a lot? Do you cover? Do you just do you play the run? It seems to me, the debate with the Giants right now is some people are saying Saquon's worn down, maybe Saquon's hurt. I think teams are just stacking the box. The teams have just kind of figured out what's going on, and they're stacking the box. So, what should we look for as far as trying to stop Saquon Barkley Sunday?
Right now, this defense is 8th in the NFL
Right.
against the run, and that 5 run fit is what essentially is what they want to do. They want to suffocate you. They want to put you in long third down situations so they can allow Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat, somebody who runs a 4.4, has the wingspan of a pterodactyl, can come after you. And so that's what they want to do first. They want to stop the run. They want to force you in long third downs, be able to get after Daniel Jones, get after the quarterback, and be able to get the offense on the field. And they've been effective at doing that thus far this season. Obviously in passing yards, they're 10th as well. So it's not like they've just been clicking as of late. And I think a lot of their issues derive from big plays, extending down the field. I couldn't tell you how many times early on the season I was saying, this quarterback is the least in the NFL in aggressive throws. He's the least throwing of air yardage completed in the NFL. Then comes out in the game and we give up a big pass to him. And so
Right.
that's kind of the concern that we had early on. It's not the minute, small things that happen. It's the big play mistake is what really puts us in the hole.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in terms of blitzing, they haven't really had to blitz too much, and
Right.
it's been a very good job by Jack Del Rio over the last 2 months or so of just generating pressure with this defensive line, keeping everybody else back in coverage on passing downs, and it's really worked out for him. I mean, this defense really goes as the defensive line goes. It all starts up front with them.
Yep.
As the defensive line has been able to get pressure on the quarterback, you started to see the corners in turn play a lot better. Kendall Fuller's been lights out the last 8 games or so. Benjamin St. Juice has been another person who's been fantastic. Derek Forrest, our other safety, He's been lighting it up. So it really goes as this defensive line goes, and they haven't been blitzing too much, but that's kind of concerning against the Giants because last week Atlanta in the first half ran the ball at will against us. I mean, there was nothing that we could do to stop them. It seemed like that. So it's going to be interesting if we're going to try to stack the box more so against you guys because Saquon's got more talent in his left finger than anybody on Atlanta does. So I don't know, man. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very interesting to see how we combat
Do you
this.
guys move Sweat around anymore at all, or you still just
Not
keep him out left end?
not generally. Our defense,
Right.
if you were going to say in a simple aspect for our defense, it's simple but effective. They don't want to send extra guys to do extra things. They want to just be able to tell you to go do your job and execute at that, basically.
And we have seen a few when the Jack Del Rio has dialed up some blitzes. They've been very well timed. It seemed like Jack Del Rio, for all the stuff that he gets off the field and what everybody likes to say about him, Jack Del Rio is a very, very smart man in terms of X's and O's in football. And he's made some fantastically well timed blitzes with Benjamin St. Juice that come to mind, where just at the right time, he's right there.
Rare.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't do them often, but when they do, they do use them.
Right.
But
I'll tell you, Carl, if the Giants run, I think they got to run behind Andrew Thomas, and they might actually start. Yeah. This might be one of those games where they start airing it out to open up the running game.
Right.
And if they do, we know Daniel Jones is going to have success doing it because he always has success against us.
Well, I think the one chance that the Giants may have is to get back to what was getting them successful earlier in the season, which is when all else fails, we don't have we don't have good wide receivers. We have Darius Slayton, who's reemerged. If you spread it out, and Wan'Dale Robinson, who is our great rookie, actually finally had a 100-yard game last week. Now he's done for the season. So it's slim pickings for us with weapons, but it is what it is. If you line them up, you guys need to cover them. Paul, there may be holes, running lanes for Daniel to get back to. Listen, dude, if the opening's there and you get 8 yards, man, just go.
That's something we've always struggled with over the last 3-4 years, especially. It's been containing mobile quarterbacks.
Right.
And that's what always scares me about Daniel Jones.
This may be one of those games for the Giants because
absolutely.
Yeah.
So where's the big weakness then in the defense that we could look to exploit? Is it coverage? Is it trying, can we throw the ball downfield? Where do you see the weakness that scares you the most?
So last week with Atlanta in particular, a weakness had shown itself because with Cole Holcomb being on IR, what the Falcons did, they were able to run up the middle very effectively, even though we are very good against the run. What they did is they basically triple teamed Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, but it's not technically a double team in a running fit. What it is he's just chipping off to the linebacker. But what that did is that the linebackers did not fill the hole. So they were able to be effective in the run game. So if I'm you guys, I'm looking at a way to be able to do that as much as possible. As much as I can take away John Allen, Deron Payne in the run game, I'm going to feel good about where I'm at from that point. And then, like I said earlier, I think where you can feel really good at is catching us falling asleep. Because obviously we are going to keen in on looking at Saquon Barkley. You guys could take advantage by hitting us deep, knowing that we're looking at that, and us giving up big plays so far this season. That could definitely happen in this game, in my opinion, because Daniel Jones, Vanilla Vic, for some reason, whenever we play him, just slings it and is able to be good in that sense. But the other aspect of it's his running. We haven't done a good job of being able to do that thus far this season, and you cannot allow. You don't want Daniel Jones's job to be easy. I want him to throw to win. I don't want him to allow to run the football at will as much as he wants and to be effective. I want him to sit in the pocket, diagnose the defense, and have to throw to get the W.
Steve?
Last question I got. You guys are one of the few teams you haven't had a bye yet. Do you think your team, and this is maybe me wishful thinking, you guys, are you starting to see signs of getting tired a little bit? It's getting late in the season to finally get a bye.
Oh yeah, that's one of the problems with having a late bye week. The only thing is, usually I would say yes, but I think this team's actually just having a lot of fun right now. I think that they love playing. Obviously, winning cures everything. They're best team in the NFL over the last 7 games, 6-1. So they're having fun. They're winning, and they're doing it in good fashion. The first time that I can remember that we've had a game where it hasn't been nearly a heart attack, or it hasn't
Right.
messed me up, as was against the Texans 2 weeks ago, and they could finally just enjoy a game, just win, have fun, be comfortable. And then last week comes with Atlanta, and it's even worse than it's ever been. It's so close. So if they are, they're not showing it yet. But I like to think that they're still having fun. And that bye week's right after this game, so the light's at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I would say that obviously everyone in the NFL at this point is getting wear down. It's late in the season. That being said, this team is somewhat getting healthy to a point. Benjamin St-Juste does have to come back, but it's like they were more injured early on in the season. So it's like, they are getting some reinforcements at the same time dealing with some things. But obviously I think the momentum of what's transpired is what's probably carrying their energy more than anything at this point. And so I would expect them to have that lull if they lose.
It almost seems that the buy is almost, even though you need a buy and you're tired, maybe getting a little exhausted here, it's coming at a bad time because you guys are just starting to hit your stride.
Right. It's funny. Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
exactly
right.
It reminds me of when we went to face the 72. I wasn't alive then, but when we went to go face the 72 Dolphins in the Super Bowl, the first week the NFL took 2 weeks in between, a week off in between the games, the Super Bowl and the championship games, and we were rolling. If they didn't take that week off, maybe the Dolphins wouldn't be 72. Dolphins wouldn't be the only perfect team, But hey, I beg to differ. I wasn't around then, so I don't know how true that is.
I'm gonna just avoid that whole age. So, here's my last question: If you guys don't make the playoffs, does Ron Rivera come back?
I think he does. I think to be perfectly honest, I think he has pretty good control over Dan Snyder. At this point, he is the face of the organization. If he were to let go Ron, all eyes are going to be back on Dan, and he doesn't have anyone that he can lean on to say, "Hey, look, he's going to make it calm. He's going to make it okay." That being said, we don't know what's going to go on with the sale of the team, and so you can look at this and say any new owner could walk in and say, "I want a clean house." But in my heart, dude, I think that he is the right coach for this team. You're seeing the results of his success. It's been hard here in Washington the past couple of years. His fan base has been complaining about literally freaking everything, and so it's kind of cool to finally see something it pay off in a sense. And so it'd be unfortunate they did let him go if they didn't make the playoffs because it seems like this is something that we don't usually have, and it's not a good time to let that go.
Right.
And on top of that, I think the thing about Ron is he seems to be more than just like a on the field type thing going on with him, where it's like there's so much going on. He was brought in here to kind of stop the leaks coming out of the locker room, to kind of change the culture, and you've really seen that in his tenure here. Now, obviously, there's still stuff going on, and it's not going to stop until old Danny Boy gets out. But it's definitely he's doing a good job, and this team seems to be on the right track with a lot of that. So I think even if he does eventually, after his contract, kind of step down, I do think he's still going to be involved with the team. So I do think he's going to constantly have his thumbprint on it. At least I hope so, because I really like Ron. I think that a lot of the guys really respect him. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere after this season.
And it seems like he still has the locker room too, correct?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah, exactly. That never happens. Right.
And honestly, a lot of people have thought that maybe Ron Rivera is too player centric. He has a very close connection to his players. If there's anything you could say about Ron, it's that. And he is too loyal to an extent. So without a doubt, he does have a firm grip on that locker room. And I think that's evident by all the off the field issues, him having cancer, the Snyder fiasco, all the lawsuits, the name change, and this team continued as long. Like, even though a lot of people didn't give him any credit for those wins the past couple seasons, the fact that they were able to still get those wins against some pretty good teams says a lot about Ron Rivera and how he keeps this locker room focused, even when the world seems to be crashing down around him.
He's a good coach.
Yes. A lot of the fan base wants him gone for some reason, but it is what it is.
Grass isn't always greener. Be careful.
I know. That's what we keep trying to. That's literally what we keep trying to say. Yeah, exactly. We're like, do you guys remember Jim Zorn? Do you remember that whole era?
Wow.
Do you guys remember any of this stuff? God,
wow,
it's been miserable.
So
sucks getting old.
Before we wrap it up, predictions for Sunday, guys. Let's go.
Oh,
I think it's going to be very close. I think this is going to be a bar fight type of game. I think these are two teams that are going to scrap it out, go blow for blow. You're going to see a lot of run. You're going to see a lot of punts. You're not going to see crazy offensive plays up and down the field. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think if you're an old school football fan,
Kyle, what's the weather, guys? What's the weather going to supposed to be before you finish your prediction?
Oh, I know Saturday it's supposed to rain.
In New York,
as of right now, is it?
Yeah, it's in New York.
Oh, it is in New York. You're right.
Right.
That's
Hold
yeah.
on.
Never mind.
I'll give you
I
a
know there's a storm system moving up from the south up to
Yeah.
the east.
Regardless,
So
there's a storm system.
I
Yeah.
think that's just. I think that's probably what just went through us.
right now. It
No,
looks
there's another one coming. I
right
think.
oh
now.
no,
It looks
it's a bad one coming up from the south.
Yeah.
Okay.
right now. It looks sunny and 50.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Really?
perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find it to be I think it's hard. I've always said it's very hard to be able to pick divisional games, but I do feel like these teams are very evenly matched in the sense of how they're rostered up, and where their strengths are, technically, and just maybe wide receiver, big difference there. But I think that this is going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to come down to last possession and who makes the less mistakes and who actually capitalizes on the opportunities that are given to them. And typically, it's how these divisional games go. So that being said, I'm going with the Washington Commanders. I do think that they'll win probably 17-16. I really do think this is going to be a low scoring, just bar fight, just old school traditional NFL 60s 70s football, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go with the same thing. The Giants have had our number a lot lately. But I'm going to go Washington 52, New York 3. I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be something? It's going to be a very good game. You guys could easily, we
They
could see a
seriously
heavy
can.
dosage of easily. They're probably,
You guys could come out in the first half, be 24-6. Like that's how, that could easily
I don't
happen.
want to say it, but you guys are probably a better team. But I could see heavy doses of Saquon and Daniel Jones running the ball well. I love Brian Daboll. I love what you guys have done. I love Andrew Thomas. I love the way that you guys are set up. But I just think that whatever this Heineke magic is, it's got to run out eventually, but it's not going to run out yet. And I'm going to say Washington 24, New York 21, just a classic game. And it's going to come down to the very end. And I'm sorry, but I have to pick the Washington Commanders in this one, guys, because otherwise I wouldn't be a fan, I guess.
Steve?
I'm sure you guys are going to pick the Giants, of course.
Yeah, and I wouldn't blame you.
Less.
Yeah.
I would expect nothing less. I agree with everything you guys said. I'm actually really worried about this game.
Yes.
For me to say the Giants have to have this, I know Washington feels the same way.
Yep.
There's a playoff
Right.
spot on the line.
We could just tie.
Early season, I predicted the Giants were going to lose their first game to the Cowboys and win the second one. They were winning at halftime last week, and the Giants have literally half our roster injured. And I truly believe if we were healthy, we would have beaten the Cowboys in Dallas. I really believe that. So even though they were a far more talented team, and the reason I say all those things and the reason I bring all that up is, no offense, I really do like Ron Rivera. I think he's an excellent coach. I think him and Del Rio are old school, and Carl knows I love that especially when we're talking defense. But I think we have the coach of the year still. I think our offensive coaching staff, Wink. There's nobody else I would want coaching our defense. I just don't see how they let us lose this game. And to me, it's coaching and scheme. So I agree. I think it's going to be like a 1-point game. That's my updated prediction. I think like 17-16. It's going to be a what show.
Hell yeah.
It's going to be very frustrating for both sides, I think, at times. I think Giants fans are going to be incredibly frustrated and disappointed. I think Washington fans are going to feel the same way, like, oh my God, there's going to be missed opportunities. I just hope the refs don't cause either team to win or lose. As long as the refs stay out of it, let the players decide the game. Yeah.
I think we can all agree on that. I think we would all love
Yeah.
that. I cannot stand it when they do that in these divisional games, man. Just let the boys play.
Especially Philly fans would be so upset because the refs won that game for us. So it would be super awesome to see the refs just back off for once. But
So this game to me has all the earmarkings of the old Giant Redskin rivalries back in the 80s with Theismann and
Lawrence Taylor. Hopefully you don't snap our quarterback's leg this time.
Well, I don't wish that on anybody, but
yeah.
It just
Maybe
that's when the rivalry was really great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
both teams were winning Super Bowls, and we lived through that.
Yeah,
right. So I think this game kind of takes on that feel because of where we're both at right now. I think this is going to be, Kyle, to your point, I think this is going to be a dogfight. Mike, I'm kind of thinking along your lines here. I say Giants 23-21.
Okay. Hey, yeah.
I respect that, man.
I wouldn't be surprised if any of this is one of those games where it can really go either way and the teams match up so well that it's it's got to go one way, and I think that it'll be a good fight. But I could see it going either way. Really, the Giants are a very good team.
To be honest, the fact that you give us 21 points in like just your prediction says a lot in the respect category, because early on in the season it would be easy to say 40-6, 35-14, type of thing. Just it's respectable. I really do appreciate, because I do think these are two very even teams, and I think you have good reason to think that if you were healthy, you beat the Cowboys, because obviously you guys being 7-4, you'd
Yeah.
proved it up until this point that you can play in this league, and you do a damn good job at it. Just so freaky surprising that the turnaround is so fast. Like, is Dave Gettleman that bad, or is Brian Daboll and them that good?
What's your guys' offensive coordinator's name again? He's a former quarterback, right?
Mike Kafka.
Yeah.
Kafka.
He's gonna probably be a head coach soon, right? I would imagine, because what he's done with your guys' offense seems to be, and he worked with Patrick Mahomes in the past, right? Like
I think he's a couple years away though.
But within the coming like 3 years or so, 2-3 years.
Possibly.
Dude, that's what we said with Sean McVay. The Rams did not wait.
Right.
They did not wait.
True.
Right. Yeah. But I'll tell you this, you know what? The turnaround. So to answer your question, Kyle, Dave Gettleman was terrible. I mean, he pretty much left the cupboard bare, is what he did.
Yeah.
But Steve, correct me if you disagree here. Where I think the difference, first of all, we can't forget the job that Joe Shane as GM has done.
Yeah.
Right. He's done a great job. He's been a great, you could
good-looking guy too.
The talent evaluation he does, and he's prepared. And that's a key word with both he and Daboll. They have this team prepared, and we've been in every game this year. We have not been blown out. I don't see it coming. Not this week anyway, guys. Sorry. But my point is that they've changed the attitude and the mindset, where it's now
culture.
Yeah, the culture. You're right. I was hesitant to use the word, Steve, but you're right. The culture now is, hey, we can play with anybody. And it's kind of like that next man up and why not us kind of mentality. And I think that's been the biggest takeaway from the job that Brian Daboll has done with this team all year long. Like, they believe.
It's funny because that's exactly how we felt with this team after the Philly win. That kind of was their moment of saying, look, you played with the undefeated team. Nobody gave you a chance. You were able to go in and inflict your will. Let them talk about the refs and everything like that. The fact is, I can't take this away. You can play with anybody, but there's certain parameters. There's a structure here that you have to go in, and you have to make sure you meet those in order for that to happen. And that's kind of what our thought process going into these games. You have a short checklist. It's simple, but it's effective. If you're able to cross those off, you're good to go.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this was really great tonight. We really appreciate this and really enjoyed the time. You guys are great, and definitely love to do this again with you guys down the road.
Of course, thank you. Yeah, hey, good news is we only got about 2 weeks till the next game, right? We play you guys back to back. We just have a bye week between. Yeah. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen on a schedule.
So I got to keep my comments to a minimum here and keep it respectful, because if we're doing this again in 2 weeks, guys, it's
right.
It's going to be dangerous.
It's going to be a different feel. Yeah, one of us is going to come in here like we should have won this game, but the refs, unfortunately,
somebody's going to come in bloody and bruised.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, I've been wanting to say just one thing. Listen, guys, Crump kind of hinted at it. He and I both watched the Giants and went to a lot of Giants games in the 80s and early 90s when the Giants were winning Super Bowls. But you know who else was winning Super Bowls? You guys were. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, the one team and the one group of fans that I've always had a lot of respect for within our division is the Washington fans. And it's the coaches, it's the players, but it's the fans. There's never been any disrespect. There's never been a sense of you don't feel safe at games. I remember the old RFK, and the players played the game the right way. And it was our best against your best. And sometimes you guys won, sometimes we won. And this has been one of my favorite podcasts so far, because it was great to have you guys on here and finally have some representation of the one team in the division. It's just respectful to play them, and you don't have to deal with some of the crap that those other two teams and their fans, throw our way.
Yeah,
100% agree. 100%,
I really appreciate you saying that. Obviously, we're a loyal group that's been through a lot of painful crap, obviously. Yes. But the one thing I will say is, how awesome it is for the NFC East if all 4 teams do make the playoffs. I think
I
as the
know.
NFC East itself, I think those division rivalries need to kind of have some resurgence. You know what I mean? I feel like it's perfect. I think this is a great time for it to have all 4 NFC East teams in there battling for the playoffs. I think that's awesome.
Two
Well, it's
years
actually
removed
better
from a
for the
7-9
NFL.
team
Yeah.
winning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the NFC East is good, it's just better for the league.
Yep.
You know?
Historic.
100%.
And to Steve's point, you know, when we play Washington, it's always been about just the football and not all the other crap that comes with it. And
Right.
that's the one takeaway that I've always come away with when we play Washington as well. So, and you guys, you know, you guys carried that tradition well. You guys didn't disappoint. So we really appreciate it. Good luck with your podcast. Hope we could do this again in 2 weeks, guys. Maybe on your show since it'll be an away game for the Giants. And guys, good luck Sunday and hopefully you have a great game.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for the
you.
invite. I
Hey,
really do appreciate it.
Kyle, best of luck with the pregnancy.
Oh, thank you very much,
Yeah.
sir. It's scheduled to be induced tomorrow night, so she should be here on Thursday. But yes, you guys, we will be linking up again for when you guys come here to Washington. I'll make sure to submit that in. You guys will be on our show. We'll come back at this. We'll be able to rehash our statements here, and we'll see how right we were with our predictions. I think it's
That's
awesome.
right.
But I
That's
really
right.
do appreciate you guys bringing us in here. And obviously, if you guys want to, obviously, you've got a lot of Giants followers, but we're the Burgundy Zone. You can find us on Twitter just searching for the Burgundy Zone, and YouTube, Google, Spotify, Apple iTunes, podcast, Facebook, anything you really want, just search for us. And we also have a website as well where we sell merchandise and other stuff as well. So you can always find us. Just type
You
in the
got-
Burgundy Zone.
You got the Giants zone and you got the Burgundy zone, so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yes,
there we
sir.
go. Yeah, there we go.
Guys, again, thank you for coming on tonight. Good luck with everything, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank
Good
you.
luck,
All right,
boys.
guys.
No
Take it easy.
injuries.